Operating at an extraordinary level can seem challenging. Learn how to survive in the lone wolf economy in the OG Money podcast with Lonnie Ogulnick. Drawing on over 20 years of experience in the trenches of Wall Street, Lonnie explores what it takes to be successful in today's rapidly changing environment. From daily routines, wealth strategies, and sustaining the highest levels of wisdom, Lonnie and his guests unpack proven ways to live an extraordinary life.
Welcome to the OG Money podcast with Jay Parker, the CEO of Douglas Elliman, Florida, a real OG. It's a great honor to have you here. I'm going to dig a little bit into, the history of Jay Parker and how you became the CEO of Douglas Elliman. So why don't you give us a brief history of, the childhood and then morph into like where you started your career at and how you ultimately became the CEO of Douglas Elliman.
Well, first of all, great to be here, Lonnie. I'm glad that you gave me the opportunity to participate, and it's always great to be around you. I know we always try to find more time to be together, so it's good to be here with you. I grew up in Toronto, always had my eyes set on being in a luxurious lifestyle location like California or Florida, and ultimately went to law school here at the University of Miami. At the time, going through law school, I was focused on real estate development. In real estate, I worked for some developers in the shopping center space, a guy named Jack Abdo, a guy named Jeff Brandon, and really got my feet wet in more commercial development. And then after graduating from law school, I worked at Gunster Yoakley, both in the Palm Beach office and in the Miami office. At that time, I was fortunate enough to work with a cellular tower company called SBA Communications, which gave me an interesting perspective on real estate and finance, mergers and acquisitions, and then ultimately taking a company public. So they built towers, radio towers.
Yeah, I remember buying the stock, like 99.
And it was interesting because, while those things are just kind of boring metal towers that are in really rural and urban locations, the real estate on them is no different than any other piece of real estate. They would sell the space to different tower operators. And so I was involved with the leasing and the acquisition and ultimately the disposition in certain circumstances. So I got to see the real estate side. And then I also got to see the mergers and acquisition side because they would buy other tower operators in other markets. And then finally they went public. So I got to see a different side of it with the, ultimately taking the company public and the legal aspects of that. And in the interim, I was being approached by a company that was in the tech sector that was trying to raise money to sell cars online, which at the time they thought was the craziest thing in the world, and everybody thought we were crazy. It's interesting, I had a discussion today with a new tech company, and we talked about valuations, and the gentleman said that, I'm not really worried about valuation. I want to get the money committed, and once I have the money committed, I'll work with the people who are committing the money to determine a valuation, which was a different approach than my friends were at the time because they thought they had a $100 million company, even though I haven't raised much money. And so we went around the country, met every VC that was out there, and they all thought we were crazy for trying to sell a car online. I eventually abandoned the initiative, and 2 years later, eBay Motors sold $1 billion worth of cars online. Shows you how to, being greedy doesn't get you to where you want to be. But from that, I ended up working with a merchant bank in New York. I worked there for a few years until 9/11, and then decided that it was a telecom-based bank, so they were investing in fixed wireless platform throughout the pan-European markets, which is, again, really exciting for me. I got to learn a lot, participated in some interesting acquisitions, and leveraging my technology experience and my cellular experience and ultimately being a lawyer. And finally decided I missed Florida. 9/11, thankfully I didn't lose anyone personally, but it was an impactful period for many people, me included. I said, enough with this. I want to move back to Miami and start my own law firm. So I came here and opened up a title insurance company and a law firm with a couple of law school buddies of mine and grew it pretty big, and to the point where I said, look, they were more on the immigration side. I was more on the real estate side. I was doing all the heavy lifting on real estate. I said, enough. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to, build up this real estate division when you guys aren't really letting me participate in the immigration. Yeah, partners. It's tough. It's tough. Partners. You got to be really lucky with partners.
I always say the only way I ever saw a partnership work is when two cops walk down the beat and one writes, one talks. That's it. It's the only way.
Well, you did it at home. You have a good partnership at home, and that's a good thing. And that means a lot. That's actually
she talks, I write.
Foundation. Yeah, well, so look, I eventually started my own title company, and we grew it, me and my team, into what was the largest Chicago title insurance company in the state of Florida. And I loved it. But it became extraordinarily taxing. You know, I had agents that were demanding and successful, calling on me for all the things that their brokerage firm wasn't providing them with. And while I saw an opportunity to get into brokerage, at the same time I recognized that to do it right, you required a significant amount of capital. And there would be a lot of risk, because to go out there and start, Parker Realty or something along those lines, I would be competing with the big institutional companies. I would be competing with the successful local mom and pop operators. So I didn't really see the need to transition my life from what I was doing and what I loved and what I was in control of to the brokerage side of the business. I just stayed comfortable with it. About 8-9 years ago, the then CEO of the Florida Brokerage, which was a much smaller operation, approached me and said, "Hey, Howard Lorber would like to meet you. Come meet him." So I went and met with Howard, and at the time, Douglas Elliman in Florida was a standalone operation because the New York operation was under a franchise with Prudential. And so I said, Howard, there's no way I could leave what I'm doing to run what was then a 100-agent operation, but keep me in mind. And if you ever decide to bring it all under one umbrella, I'm interested in talking with you further. About a year to the day later, he came to me and he said that he's decided to buy out Prudential, and they were going to launch Douglas Elliman Real Estate as a national initiative. And what really caught my attention was that he said, we were only going to be in those markets that our clients wanted to be in. And that really resonated with me, because having practiced law and closing over $1 billion a year in transactions, I knew that the buyers were all coming from the same places, which also made me understand that probably the same scenario exists in other major markets. So who's really going to the Hamptons? You're not getting people from the West Coast of the United States going to the Hamptons. It's primarily people from New York and Connecticut, New Jersey. So if you're going to open up a business in the Hamptons and you can connect with the business in Manhattan, that makes sense. Obviously, Florida, South Florida, where are our buyers coming from? New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Toronto. So if you can connect with those buyers, it's the same type of thing. And same applies to the West Coast. Where do people come to Aspen? Where do people come from to go to, Texas and Houston? It's the same people. They're coming from California. They're coming from Texas. They're going to Aspen. So I thought there was real vision in Howard's statement at the time. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take a chance, and I'm going to go over to this, what at the time was a 100-agent office, a couple of offices. We were doing about $300 million a year in volume. And I'm going to try to build this. And I took my experience as a lawyer and as a real estate title agent, my relationships and credibility that I'd established with many of the top agents in the market, and we started building. And I was very fortunate to align with some really great veterans in the business. My chief operating officer, I consider a partner, Gus Rubio, and great managers throughout our infrastructure. And we've built it into what today is a $5.5 billion business. We've got about 1,200 agents. And look, even through the pandemic, our business has soared. It's been hard, no question about it, to face the cutbacks and the challenges and the layoffs, and mostly driven by, in the first instance, fear, and now really kind of dealing with the changes in the New York market. But the rest of our markets are outperforming last year.
Okay, so we're going to dig there a little deeper in a minute or two. I want to touch on the nuts and bolts of what it takes to become a successful person, because most of the people listening to this, they have a keen interest in what it takes, right? I'm still learning, right? I want to know. So I remember your title company was the go-to title company for Douglas Elliman even prior to you becoming CEO. How did that happen?
Well, we were the go-to title company for a lot of firms. Okay. I would say the number one thing was accountability, availability, and a real dedication to what you're doing. I found that most of my competitors, they checked out at 5 o'clock. They took it as a job instead of a commitment. They weren't available. They weren't responsive. They answered their phones. They answered their phones until they didn't want to, and then they didn't. I made myself available at all times to all my agents and to all the people that worked with me. And I really cared. It wasn't just about earning a commission. I used to say, if you went to a lawyer, and I was a lawyer, and you felt that the only thing that lawyer cared about was how much he could earn off you, you wouldn't feel so good. people can resonate more with the idea of it with being a doctor. If you went to see a doctor and you thought that doctor was calculating how much you could earn by your sickness or your ailment, you wouldn't feel that good. And I sort of felt like we have an obligation as, closing agents, as real estate attorneys, to really identify with our clients and understand what their needs were. From the perspective as the realtor, they wanted to close their deal. They wanted to build their business. The end client, they wanted to feel safe. They wanted to feel secure. And I guess, just growing up with my dad as a real estate lawyer, my mom as a realtor, and being from Canada, because I think Canadians are genuinely sincere people, my goal was to satisfy my clients, both the realtors and the agents, and give 100%. And look, it's on the day that my children were born, I went to close a deal, and I was working for a big developer, and it was a big client of mine and meant a lot to me. And I literally ran out of the hospital and went and closed a deal and came back. Because it was everything to me.
So I'm going to take you down memory lane here because you had I would say a very, very, very large financial transaction for me, and you probably don't even know about it because you probably don't remember it. But we roll in a very small community here, right? So we know a lot of the same people. So I said, hey, Mark, I got a situation. Do you know a lawyer? I need some help here on a transaction. And he goes, yeah, no problem. I got my guy here. Sends me an email. It's you. I call you, you pick up the phone. Oh, you're friends with Mark. What do you need? Whatever, right? So I'm like, hey, in like 3 days from now, my option to sell, this guy wants to meet with me, and I don't want to meet with him because I don't want to sell this property for $750,000. I need some help. And you're like, just lay low. You could take his calls, respond by email, and just say, if you want to meet me, I'm here. But at the end of the day, he has to actually send in the proposal, send in the deposit, and what have you. So I call you 2 days after because you said give it a day and then contact me 2 days after if he doesn't respond. So 2 days later, I speak to you. You're like, I'll write up the note. You write up this whole letter. This is no longer a valid option to buy. Fast forward 2 years, and I sell that for about $1.3 million. It was $500,000
right.
that you helped me. And then I took that and I rolled it into my property that I live in today. And sort of thanks to you with your coaching, you made me a significant amount of money. But that goes.
I think I told you to become a broker too.
Yes, I did become a broker when I had to sell the properties, right? And then I made my commissions on those 2 sales. But it just goes to show, I think, a characteristic trait of you where you were selfless in that. You didn't care. There was nothing about it financially. It was almost like, hey, you're a friend of any friend of mine is a friend of mine, right? So that was a powerful thing. So it did not surprise me when I found out you were now the CEO of Douglas Elliman. So I want to touch on something, though, here, because it's very important. As a salesman, as a financial advisor, I think everybody's a salesman, right? At the end of the day, everybody's a salesman. So you deal with how many people? Hundreds and thousands of people in your life, right? You have a very, your 1% group of advisors that probably produce 20% of the revenue, the 80-20 rule. So what are these specific characteristics that you see over and over again in those top producers?
It's interesting. In order to succeed and really be in that top percentile, you have to be determined. You have to be able to take the punches and get right back up and keep going. You have to realize that you don't win at every up to bat. Sometimes you have to take a few strikeouts before you hit the home run. I believe that you have to have courtesy and respect and realize that not every single person is going to react the way that you expect them to react. Sometimes I believe you have to give a little bit to gain. You reference your story. How many times I've gone above and beyond for people only expecting that when my name comes up in conversation, it's in a positive light and hoping that ultimately that person listening is going to be that next big win for me, that next big opportunity. If you look at the realtors that I work with, it's an interesting array. Sometimes I say it's better to be lucky than be smart. I think in real estate, there is a lot of luck. You have that relationship that you have. I think the difference between the top realtors out there and the general population is a lot of smarts. The ones that are really outperforming, they know their product, whether you're selling commodities, selling equities, selling real estate, or selling anything in the market. You have to know your product. You really have to know what you're selling. And I'm amazed when I walk into a product with one of my agents that's a pro, and they walk me through the home. They know everything about it. And by the way, when I get to that home, the air conditioning's perfect. The music is on at just the right sound level. The blinds are all open. Everything's put away. The place is pristine. And as they walk me through that home, they know everything about it. The lighting systems, the pool, the salt water, the generator, when the home was built, who the architect was, what the neighborhood has to offer, where the closest schools are. You have to do your research, because operating at the highest level, your clients or the people that are potentially your customers, they are expecting that of you, and it does shine. And every one of my top producers, I can tell you, they have that same commitment to understanding what it is that their responsibilities include and executing on that. Sometimes it surprises me that some of those that are at the top lack in some of the other traits that I would think are equally important. Having a respect, knowing when to grow, and knowing when to take on more responsibility as opposed to taking it on and not being able to service it. Somehow people seem to get away with that a little bit more than I would expect. But our market, and particularly in South Florida, it's starting to really evolve. It used to be that this market was a second, third home destination. The amount of concern or diligence that went into the purchase was different than it is today. The New Yorkers, as you well know, there's not a lot of room for error in New York. They say if you can make it there, you make it anywhere. That's because the expectations are really high. So when people come from New York and they're looking at this product here, when they're talking to realtors, they have demands and expectations that are just as high as they would if they were in Manhattan or any other major market. And so to make it now is a little bit harder than it was before. I remember when I was a real estate lawyer and people would sell a project, the salespeople that they would put on that project, the criteria was attractive. Because it didn't matter. People were lining up. So it just impacted the overall impression of the project to just have handsome or beautiful salespeople in there. Today, the developers want the best of breed. What have you sold? How big was your business? How many contacts or projects have you been on? They want the best because they know that client walking in the door that's going to spend $3, $5, $10, $20, $50 million, they're going to look for real data. They're going to want to have real answers. So the characteristics, I think, in our industry are the same as in everyone. Know your job, know your role, be punctual and respectful and prompt and on point. And if you don't do that, you're not going to hold that position for very long because the luck will fade to the knowledge.
All right, I want to touch on New York for a minute. New York seems to me like it's just burning. Like nothing I've ever seen. I spoke to my father. My father was around in the city. He worked there in the 70s. He said this reminds me of the 70s. But do you see New York recovering? Do you see it coming back? Okay, so you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the real question is when. I speak to a lot of realtors every day in New York, and the sentiment seems to be that we've bottomed out, because anyone that's living there now knows that it's not so easy. Real estate, we've seen kind of really hit a bottom or go down. Inventory's up, the rental market's suffering. People are moving here. There's no question about it that people are moving here. And, for the last 2 years, we've seen people move here, but New York was still doing well. I didn't really talk about it much. And quite frankly, it's hard for me because, as much as I'm focused in Florida, not having New York do what it normally does impacts my livelihood and my company, and I care about that. But the truth of the matter is, our market's evolved, every aspect of it. Our kids go to the same school. You can talk about how good the schooling is. The hospitals have risen to a level that I think is world-class. The culture is there's not another market that can say that our culture hasn't elevated to a world-class level, from theater to arts to Basel, you name it. I mean, we're a worldwide destination for arts and culture. And the real estate. I mean, we have world-class architects, world-class developers on both the single-family home and the condo market. So when you look at the lifestyle here and the cost of living here and the taxes here and the availability of outdoor living as compared to other major metropolitan markets, doesn't matter whether it's New York or Chicago or Boston, we're pretty appealing. And when you layer that in with the riots and the pandemic and all the other elements, and then on top of that, look at the momentum that we've had with, many of the people in New York that were looking here said, it's just hard to leave my family or hard to leave my friends or hard to leave my parents. Well, your parents are living here already and your friends have already moved, or many of them have, and your friends' kids have moved. So now your kids aren't saying, but Mom, Dad, I don't want to leave my friends. It's become very, very, very hard to stop that momentum. But New York is one of the greatest cities in the world, and it has a lot to offer. But when everything's shut down and people are complaining about crime in the streets, and you've got the political infrastructure that they have in that market that isn't focused on those that have instead of those that have not, it's very hard to maintain the wealth that's there. So I think it will absolutely recover, but I think we're in for a long haul.
Well, from a stock standpoint, what you described to me is Florida is Zoom Video and New York is ExxonMobil.
Pretty much.
So I'm no rocket scientist, but I understand basic economics 101. There's really no tax revenues being generated in New York at this point. So if that hole gets dug deeper and deeper and deeper and the taxes go up on the New Yorkers, it's just going to be a cascading effect. And if this whole DocuSign Zoom movement kind of sticks, I just don't see what the major appeal is, other than the energy of New York City that you hope comes back. But if New York was a stock and Florida was a stock, I'd be long Florida and short New York.
Me too. I mean, look, I think there are certain institutions that will always be in New York. There are certain people that will always be in New York, and there are many people that will have a home in New York and a home here. I don't know how long the world will continue to function in the way it is now. I've been going into my office for the last 30, 40 days. I'm the only one there.
I never left my office. I have to be in an office. I have to.
I mean, at first, I called it the silver lining. My kids were home. I got to see them more. I was cooking.
Yeah, we were in Aspen together. I did a month there.
Yeah.
I worked from Aspen.
And you kind of feel like this is great. I'm not entertaining every day and every night. I'm not going out to dinners with clients and agents.
Speaking of that, but I want to go on a tangent here.
Yeah.
You go out a lot.
A lot.
But yet you also maintain a disciplined work regimen and working out regimen, right? How do you do the two? I cannot go out during the week. I can't. I won't work out. So I'd prefer not to go out. But how do you get up at 6 a.m. to work out? How many hours of sleep you need? Because I need 7, 8.
What I see what I do at night as part of my responsibility.
Right.
Being out there, connecting with agents, connecting with developers, connecting with the community. It's part of what I do and what I've always done. And it's taxing, there's no question. But the workout part is the discipline. The workout part is what keeps me focused. And no matter how hard it is to drag myself out of bed that next morning, I do it because I know that once I get in there and push it hard and start my day the right way, it'll be the recipe for the rest of my day being the way I want it to be.
So you're working out every day?
Some days better than others.
Yeah.
But I get in there. My diet hasn't been what I want it to be, and that's a drag on me too. But with all this, pandemic, you just you kind of crave that extra meal or that extra snack, and you kind of want to feel like you're treating yourself to something. Now that we're getting back to a more, what I hope, will be a more normal life. Going to the office has helped me because I didn't do that. I took advantage of the ability to stay home. And look, the idea of taking an agent out for lunch and teaching them about Douglas Elliman or talking to them about their business or trying to deal with a developer and entertaining them, it was a fun part of my business. I enjoyed that. I'd grind all day and then I'd go out at night and meet with people and try to really show them that we're the type of company that understands life a little bit. So it was a break. It really was. And then I started to miss it.
So you were a businessman and then you put your recruiter hat on, right? Like you'd have
always recruiting.
Right.
Always recruiting. In fact, it's one of the things that I think is so unique about Douglas Elliman. We don't have recruiters per se. We believe that if we do a good enough job at what we're doing, people will come to us naturally, and they do.
Right. You don't see a Rolls-Royce commercial either.
No. We've developed a different culture, and it's funny, the gym that I work out at, a local gym called Anatomy, their motto, their sort of slogan is, and culture is everything. And that's mine as well. I really believe that if you treat everyone the same way, whether they're the admins or the administrative assistants or the managers or the marketing team or the PR team, whoever it is, if you treat them the same and show them that you really care, then they look at what they do as being contributors to a family as opposed to jobbers that have something they need to do during the day. And our team throughout Florida, and I think pretty consistently across the country, is highly dedicated to what they're trying to accomplish, and they feel like they're a part of it. And that comes from the top down, and I've always felt that I spend more time with the people I work with than I do with the people who are genuinely in my family. So if I don't feel good about being around them, I lose. And so it's been sort of the staple of my career to build an environment where people feel like they're appreciated. I try to give as much as I can. I lobby for my team the same way I would for myself. I oftentimes put them ahead of myself. And people know that to be genuinely who I am. And I think that that's a big part of being a good leader.
Yeah, of course. That's where you get the loyalty. So let's dig in a little bit here on what is attacking everybody. And that's, you've got apps like Redfin. You've got Zillow. You've got 3D, little videos here. So in my financial world, right, the commission broker has been destroyed, eliminated. If you're not a fee-based financial advisor today, you're out, you're done, right? So do you see a world in which the model you have today for brokers changes?
We deal in the luxury space. I don't believe that we're close to eliminating the broker in the luxury sector. There's a lot, as I talked to you about the quality of one of our top producers, that's not replaceable by an algorithm. To have someone walk you through a $30 million property and point out the different features and describe why those features are significant or talk about why that part of the community is different than other parts of the community, I don't see a computer replacing that. There are other sectors of the residential market that I think can very easily be replaced, and I think Zillow's doing it. If you're selling, homes in a 500 home community where the difference between the home to the right and the home to the left is a few square feet and a pool, you don't need a realtor for much. They don't provide a very significant amount of service. I still think there's a benefit to having someone sell versus just providing facts. But if there's going to be a part of our community as real estate professionals that is impacted by technology, I would say it's the much lower end where it's more of a commoditized product.
So you've been through a lot, a great career. I think your future is going to be even brighter. What is the best advice you were ever given? One thing that sticks in your mind when I say you've met a lot of very successful people worth hundreds and millions of dollars, right? What's the best advice you've ever been given?
It's interesting. I say it every time I'm asked this question, and I hope she can hear me. One of my girlfriend's mothers was an extraordinarily successful woman. I met her while I was in law school, and at the time she was in a different part in her life, but she was a retail guru, a visionary. She's responsible for bringing to the United States some of the most important retail brands that exist today. And it might sound very basic, but she used to say to me, "You have a passion for what you do, and I love that about you. And if you have a passion and a determination, you'll never feel like you're working. You'll always feel like what you're doing is fulfilling that passion." And it's interesting. I think about it a lot because when you lose excitement in what you're doing, it becomes a job. You'll never achieve what you're capable of achieving if you really love what you're doing. And you struggle with that sometimes because there's no way every day is going to feel good and exciting and fulfilling. But if in the totality you can look at what you're doing and really feel good about it and excited about it, it's sort of like what that saying is, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
They go hand in hand, and I could never forget that because that is what has driven me to feel good about what I'm doing, to feel like I'm helping people achieve their goals while at the same time achieving mine has really been what has propelled me.
So I'm down a rabbit hole right now. I want to know, I'm going to hit you from left field. Bitcoin in 10 years, is it a zero, government wipes it out? Is it around the same, or is it 100,000 plus?
I think it's been played by people that shouldn't play it. I think it's been cast out as a negative, where maybe if it was properly rolled out, it could have been a positive. I don't see the technology as being that necessary as it relates to the currency component. I think you're seeing more and more that credit cards are adapting so that cash becomes secondary. And you can tap your credit card, you can swipe your phone. So I don't know. I don't know where it ends up. I'm not a bettor on it.
Have you ever gone down the Bitcoin rabbit hole? Have you ever explored it or gone down that road?
It's funny. I have a friend.
Most people haven't.
I have a friend who lives here who made a very, 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 very significant amount of wealth in Bitcoin. He actually sold his company to a company that paid him in Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin shot up, and he walked away with tens of millions at least.
Right.
And so he's the one that got me to buy in, and I never made a dime. I never lost anything, but I never made a dime.
Well, so the only advantage I see to Bitcoin, well, there's many advantages I see at Bitcoin, but imagine you lived in Argentina 4 years ago and you saw what was about to happen. Venezuela, you saw what was about to happen. So as far as a protective off-ramp from being somewhere and your currency gets devalued and crushed, if you're able to get the Bitcoin, put it on a Trezor, and get out of Dodge, you save yourself. So
there's no question.
There's a lot going on. A lot of people don't understand it, but I like asking this question right now because there's a huge amount of money going from corporate balance sheets. Like Square just put $50 million of their treasury into Bitcoin.
Oh.
So I like asking this question, but
you're much more of an expert on that than I am. I'm as basic as the basic civilian on that.
Right. That's why I ask the question, because it's either you're down the rabbit hole or you're not. And most people aren't. But anyway, right now, so, we gotta, I think we're living in the greatest place in the world, in my opinion. Miami, Florida is by far the best place in the world. You work your ass off. That's a given. So you dial it down a notch. I'm a podcast addict. That's why I started one. I was like, I used to read nonstop. So then I wrote a book. Then I listen to podcasts nonstop. So I'm like, I got to start my own podcast. But for your downtime, a show, a book, a podcast, what are you doing right now? What's the number one book or show that you would recommend?
Well, I actually just started watching Schitt's Creek.
Is that the name of it?
That's the name of it. It won every award on Netflix.
Okay. Schitt's Creek?
Schitt's Creek.
Okay.
And it's kind of funny because my 9-year-old twins love it because of the name Shit.
Right.
I don't think they capture half the story, but I read Shoe Dog. I think it's an incredible story. I think the Nike story is unbelievable. I think it talks about perseverance and fear and risk and challenge and vision. And I just admire him so much because I think that, you look at these people that create these mega companies and you just think like it goes from idea to billions, and there are so many obstacles in the way. And you and I live in a world where we're surrounded by extraordinary wealth. And sometimes you wonder, how do you get there? How do you make that happen? How come it seems so easy to others while I'm, in the trenches busting my ass every day? But I think it's all part of the story. I think it's all part of the way that we get there. And that book, Shoe Dog, it really helped me to see once again that it's not always as easy as it looks. My downtime, honest to God, Lonnie, any moment that I can spend where I'm not working, I want to be with my kids.
Good answer.
That's really where I spend it all right now. Everybody says, it goes so fast, it goes so fast. It goes the same way as every other part of your life. I look back at the last 7.5 years at Douglas Elliman. I can't even believe it's been that long. My kids are going to be 10 next month. I feel the same way about that as I do about every point in measuring time. But I can tell you one thing, I definitely appreciate them, and that's where I spend every moment of my time that I'm not working. And, in this world we live in today, you try to pull yourself away from the phones or the iPads or any other distraction. And I'm not so good at that. Even though I'll be with my kids, I'll still catch up on an email or look at a text message or find myself on Instagram, whatever the hell it is. But I'm trying harder and harder to make sure that we spend family time as family time. And when we sit down for dinner, we put our devices away. And that's really what I want to do any moment that I'm not working.
Yeah, I think that's the best advice you gave all day about just putting the phone away. And,
Agreed.
So let me flip the switch here. I've been asking you questions. Before we wrap up, do you have a question for me?
You know, I'm fascinated by people that are in the investment business. I really am. And you have so many contacts and so many people. Like, I'm amazed at how many times we cross paths with our friends. How do you manage the business that you have in trying to ask people for their trust in managing their money with friendship? You know, and it's a similar question that people get in real estate. Like, how do I turn to my friend and ask them for their listing? How do you turn to your friends, because you know everybody, and say, hey, put your money with me, trust in me?
Well, first of all, my clients are my best friends.
That's great.
Every single one of them. You know, they can call me 24/7. When it comes to personal friendships, more times than not, they come to me.
Interesting.
I don't go to them. So, and then once they come to me, I lay out the ground rules. Here's the deal. If you like an idea, I'll buy it for you. But for the most part, I'm doing this 24/7. The business has grown. I have 100, 150 clients. I try to treat them all as one client. So if we're selling a stock today, we're selling it for everybody. So
smart.
Yeah, and there's no conflict, right? I'm not charging commissions. So if you come to me and it's a 1.5% flat fee, we grow together. If I lose you money, if you're not happy with my service, you know, there's the door. There's no hard feelings. But generally, you know, the best compliment I got recently was, I've been playing tennis with you for 3 years. You never made a bad call. I can trust you with my money. But yeah, I mean, trust is earned.
Well, I'll tell you, that's what makes me so comfortable with you, is seeing how much people respect you.
Well, it's interesting
your
because
friends.
You're telling me this, but I don't know that. But it's good to see that from the outside.
I see it.
Yeah.
I see it.
That's a compliment.
Everywhere that I've been, and it's amazing. We've crossed paths in bar mitzvahs, on vacations, at restaurants. I mean, so many places, and with so many of the people that I think are wonderful people, that it proves to me, without knowing you, which I do, but even if I didn't, looking in from the outside, you know, they say you can judge a person by the company he keeps.
Right. And that's why I pulled you in, because you've done, first of all, you did a lot for me, but also, you know, around this neighborhood in Florida, you have a very good reputation. So
Thank you.
Keep that up.
As do you.
Keep doing what you're doing, and I appreciate this time you took. And
let's grow together.
100%. You got it.
Thanks, Lonnie.
You got it.
Thank you for listening to the OG Money Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available.
Securities offered through Securities America Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Securities America Advisors Inc., an SEC registered investment advisor. This site is published for residents of the United States and is for informational purposes only and does not constitute an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any security or product that may be referenced herein. Persons mentioned on this website may only offer services and transact business and/or respond to inquiries in states or jurisdictions in which they have been properly registered or are exempt from registration. Not all products and services referenced on this site are available in every state, jurisdiction, or from every person listed. Third-party comments may not be representative of all customer experiences.